Hey everybody, welcome into this week's episode of Tony's Spot on Fishing. I'm your host, Tony Krizek, and once again we're doing one of my favorite things in the world. We're fishing muskies. We're back out on the Fox River, and we're doing it my favorite style. We're throwing topwaters, may even throw a few bucktails today too. With me is my good friend Mike Eckerle. We're going to show you some tips, tricks, and techniques of how we can get muskies to go on the river here in the early summer months on topwaters. That's all this week on Tony's Spot on Fishing. Now the section of Montgomery we're fishing today is actually just right near the dam section. And basically what we want to concentrate on primarily is from the dam down to the bridge, down to Mill Street Bridge here. The very first spot we hit was just off of the little rock bar near the dam, a little area I like to just nickname the slack water pool. And a lot of times, muskies will congregate right in that section. We've seen 2 or 3 actually come in and push shad into that little slack water pool. And they can kind of jet down the current break there and rush in, grab them, and come out. We didn't see a fish there. The next spot we're moved down to here is actually near the pipe. Mike's actually on the pipe itself. There's a little secondary rock bar that comes out, and he's able to cast to the channel. He's able to cast to the edge of the slack water pool, and he can even flip inside the pipe itself. There's a little bit of a washout there that muskies will tend to hold in. And I'm actually on the spot that we kind of call the mud flat. And when we first started fishing Montgomery many years ago, chasing these toothy critters, this really was nothing more than just straight mud. But now it's definitely silted in a little bit. There's some silt, there's a little gravel, rock, timber, a little bit of everything. But it's adjacent to the main river channel, which will run very close to the east side out here. And this is an area, because of that rock bar that Mike's standing on, will actually cause a little bit of slack water right in through this section. And we can focus on fishing this, and we're able to, like I say, to contact the channel. We can get on the flat here, so we can really cover a few different spots at once while we're doing it. Like I say, we're starting out, we got low light here in the morning, throwing topwaters. We're actually throwing a couple baits from Mammoth Lures. Mike's running the jitter snake, and I'm running the little runt rager, which is a really cool little prop bait, little topwater prop bait that they do. And the really cool thing is the addition of the hackle feathers on the rear end of this thing. It really is a nice little touch. You get a little extra undulation in the water, baby loon pattern. Sweet. They have so many great colors and just awesome custom hard-made baits. And we can throw stuff like this in the low light periods here. We're supposed to get some rain and cloud cover. If we get that, of course, that topwater bite can go on for most of the day. But if that sun starts getting a little high, we're going to start switching up to some minnow baits and even bucktails, of course. The water's warm. We have a little bit of a cold front, but we got a big warm front coming in right now. So we're expecting these fish to be turning on. They're going to be chasing baits. So we don't really want to stay put too long. We're going to cover a lot of water and just keep going up and down until we find these fish, find something that'll get them active. If we can have one follow a topwater, blow up on a topwater, even stick one, anything we can to get a reaction from these fish, and we'll know exactly what it is that they want. Now, if they follow or they miss, we know the areas they're holding in. We can come back with something else, rest the area for a bit, and come back and usually stick that fish on another bait. So river situations, it's not much different than how we would fish the muskies in the lake. Same type of concept. It's just a lot shallower water. A lot of times we'll find them as shallow as a couple feet of water to the main channel here in Montgomery is 4 to 6 feet. So we're not dealing with deep water by any means. But we'll find the exact areas they're holding to. Finding a good food source in the area is something else that'll really keep the muskies close. And now we'll find the baits that'll trigger these fish. Now, as we said, the river channel runs pretty tight to the east side here at Montgomery. So when we get in the water, we're getting in the water probably just about knee deep or so, and we're pretty much almost right to the channel at that point. And you want to be very careful, especially on this side, because it is pretty much a straight drop into that channel. Now it varies from 4 feet, some spots it might even get closer to 6. So you want to be very careful when you're coming out here on this east side. Now even later on when we get on the west side, it's primarily a nice shallow flat, but you know, there's rocks and there's timber, there's different debris. So when you're out here wading, always be very careful. Now you can get a pair of lightweight waders if you feel more comfortable having waders on. In the summer months out here, we definitely don't need to worry about waders. We can come out in a pair of shorts, pair of cutoffs, and good pair of Crocs or water shoes, and just come out here and go to work on these fish. And one thing you'll notice that I'm doing here, even in the river situation, is I'm figure eight. Now there may be times, even on a topwater, that muskie may not show himself, but I can still get follows. And being down in the water will help me with that. I can actually possibly trigger a fish on a figure eight. And just like when we're on the boat, don't be afraid to stick your rod tip in the water and put the topwater underneath. You can come back up, you can go down with it. Whatever you have to do, that prop will still keep turning. It stays straight and line the hooks. It's a through wire construction on that bait. So if we have to go under the water to try to get one of these fish to go, if they're following, we don't have to worry about it spinning out, blowing out. It's going to stay true, ride true. In retrieve speeds, play around with it. We don't really want to burn it by any means. But anything from just a real slow plop, 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 to actually picking up the speed a little bit just to get a little more steady retrieve going. The current's going to dictate a lot of that. The current is actually, if it's got a little more push to it, we may have no choice but to run it a little quicker. If we don't have much or we're in a very slack water situation, we can go ahead and actually just run it a little slower. And the other thing you'll notice too, we're always going to really tend to throw up current a little more. We may throw straight out, but a lot of times we're going to throw up current or at an angle to the current. And it's just a little more natural to have that bait coming down. Now don't get me wrong, we have caught fish coming against the current. But again, the current's going to actually dictate if we can do that or not. If it's got a little more push to it, we're not going to be firing south and trying to bring it up against a real strong current. So that's the key, is just matching everything to the current, your retrieve speeds, everything like that. Now the river can change on a daily basis. If the water's being drawn down from the Fox Chain up in Antioch, you might get more push. If they got rain up north and we didn't get it down here, there'll be more push. At any moment, the conditions can change. So always be aware of your surroundings, be safe out here. There's no fish worth dying over, that's for sure. Oh, look who's over there. One just literally showed itself. It was not on my bait. What these muskies will do, they'll slide down, they'll kind of turn their body sideways and go down the current looking for food, and they can jet out of their little streams and grab stuff. And I actually was able to see him. His back was out of the water and he turned and started to move back upstream. Unfortunately, not on my bait, but just doing his rounds. He's going back up current to drift himself down again and try to find some food. Yeah, Mike had even just shouted out that he had seen the same thing. There's literally so many muskies, especially here in Montgomery, in this stretch. And the reason for it is there's a lot of food. There's walleyes, there's shad, there's suckers, there's carp, There are bass, panfish, bluegills, and crappies. There's tons of food for them to eat. Under most circumstances, a lot of these fish normally muskies don't school up together. Now you may find in really heavy populated lakes that you may have one or two or you may have two or three on a big weed flat. They'll come together, but muskies definitely have the reputation of being loners. But there's actually what we kind of call the wolf packs out here. It's a little nickname we've given them. And these fish, it's not uncommon to have two or three together, and they'll just hunt an area. Now, they may not be there together by design. It may be just the fact that there is not a whole lot of water here, and the fact when they're active, we'll see them together. But it is not uncommon on a spot to see two or three come in chasing food at the same exact time in the same exact area. So we've had two fish roll up here. We know they're moving around, they're looking for food. That's a good sign. So we moved onto this west side of the river. We fished the whole east side, we fished the channel, and we didn't have anything come up on any of our baits. We had possibly a couple fish in the area, but most action has been on this west shoreline here at Montgomery. We've seen a couple muskies roll. We've seen some shad get a little crazy, like they're getting chased. So we know that this is an area that they're working a little more. It's a fairly shallow flat. You know, it's realistically just 2 to 3 feet. You'll get a hair deeper, maybe about 3.5 towards the middle, before you get back to the channel on that east side. What's nice about it is there is a rock bar that's submerged up near the dam on this side, and it actually creates less current. So we have the shallow flat where the food can hang out, and there's some rock, there's pea gravel, there's a little bit of everything here. So there is come on back, girl. We were just doing a formative section there, and she just came up and smacked it. See if that fish is still on it. You don't see her following it. Well, I was just saying, everybody, we had seen them moving over here, and right off the bat, we had one come up and show itself on the little runt ranger. But the food is all here, so I mean the muskies on the river follow the food. Now that wasn't a real big fish. I would probably say low 30s. That would have been a darn good starter. Mike's still throwing that jitter snake from Mammoth Custom Lures. He's able to play around with her and kind of get it, aside from just swimming, and also kind of make it walk the dog and integrate some rips to it. But with a bait like I'm throwing with the Runt Ranger, pretty much a straight retrieve is what I prefer with this. You could give it some rips here and there, but that straight, steady retrieve has already brought one fish up on this bait. Now, this is one area, because of how much it's actually blocked the current, we can go ahead and we can actually throw down the river. We don't have to necessarily worry about baits blowing out or anything like that. Right near this fallen tree, a year or two ago, Mike and I were out here, and on Topwaters, Mike ended up with one right around 45 that he was able to bring up quite a few times on a Topwater, on a prop bait style bait. And like I say, east side, I wouldn't look too much to throwing down current. But on this west side, you can get away with it a little more, and it really gives you a lot more coverage when you're fan casting these sections. Now, I haven't been able to bring that fish back up, I never put a hook in that fish, but I did feel her actually bump the bait. So I was hoping, since I didn't actually hook her, that we would be able to get her to come back on a bait. More than likely, she's got onto a pot of shad or whatever she's keyed in on feeding on, and she's already moved down the river or upriver. So we're not going to really sit here too long. We've thrown back now a few times on this fish, not coming back up. There's no reason to just keep pounding. Now, we're not moving very quick or very far distances, because these muskies do go up and down the river here. So we want to be quiet. We want to be fairly stealth while we're throwing and walking as best we can be. We don't want to make too much disturbance, because we don't want to spook any of the food. We don't want to spook the muskies themselves. But we're obviously not moving at the pace we would be if we were in a boat going down a shoreline fishing muskies. And the reason for that is they do move in and out of these areas so quickly that if we spent most of our time walking this stretch just up and down, would we come in contact with them? Sure. So you got to find that happy medium of pacing yourself and your movements. There's not a ton of water. Once you feel you fished it thoroughly, move down, fish that next spot thoroughly. If you see a fish up, work it a little more. Otherwise, keep moving right on down. Just try to keep up and find these active. Here she comes. Come on, girl. She just went down on it. Fire right back in there. Well, that one there, she was just pushing water. She wouldn't come up and actually shark full behind it. But you could see the wake, she was kind of pushing behind the bait. She was there. That was a little better fish too. This is why I said we can get away with throwing down current, especially in this section. We don't have to always just focus on up current. We got enough slack water here that it broadens our horizon when we're fan casting a section. But that was a little bigger fish than the one that I had actually bumped the bait before. And you can see we've hardly moved. We've moved down just a few feet from where we once were. Like I say, these fish come in and out. Any guys that fish muskies hardcore realize we're always moving and on the move, but we don't have to move far or fast in the river. One, we don't want to disturb things too much, and two, these fish will come and go through these sections looking for food. So I keep saying the happy medium of finding where, when to move, but if you're not getting action and you want to change, just move a little bit at a time. You don't have to go run it. The river, especially the Fox River here in Illinois and around Montgomery and Oswego and Yorkville, I mean, there's not a lot of classic musky water here. These fish, I mean, we're in shallow water. A lot of guys that have never experienced this just don't really get it, how different of a ball game it is here on the river. But that's one thing we want to do, is to shed some light on exactly how we can get these fish to go when we're not fishing classic musky conditions. There's no deep water, there's no vegetation. We're not really focusing much on break lines. Find the food. It could be in a foot of water, it could be in 3 feet of water. There's muskies. There he is. Got him. That's a good one too. Thick body fish. Be careful, Bob.
Yeah.
How quick can you run and grab it? This side. You ready?
We're gonna use the current.
I'm gonna swing her up this way and bring her head right to you. Here she comes.
He's all right, baby.
All right, keep her head in the water. Here, I'm gonna hand you my rod.
Yep, got it.
All right. Hold still, girl. Let me put her head in the water so she's breathing okay. This fish is hooked in a bad spot, so we're actually just going to cut the hooks here. Because the last thing we want to do is hurt this fish. So.
Oh, sorry, thanks. Not paying attention, Bob, sorry.
All right. All right, you want to come grab the net? Got it?
Yeah, got it.
Okay, kids. There we go.
So this works.
That is a beautiful Fox River Muskie right there. Good thick fish, eating shad. We had to cut those hooks on her just because she was hooked in a bad spot. We didn't want to overstress her anymore. Good thing to have the net on hand to help work these fish in the water like this. But that is a good fish. She's knocking on the door of 40, just super thick and heavy. I mean, unreal. Let's grab a quick picture here. All right. We'll go ahead and we're going to slide her right back down. And we'll be able to work this fish. Make sure she's okay.
You are wrapped up too, just so you know.
And we'll point her head just towards the current. Whoop. She wants to go too. She's definitely, they've spawned already. She's still got the scars from that. But she's already starting to eat. You can see the belly's getting full again. I want you to be a little stronger, baby. She's starting to kick. We don't really want to let her go until she's good and re-energized here. She's starting to kick, but I want her to actually swim out of my hands. There she goes. She's catching her breath there. And off she goes. Well, there we go, guys and girls. That is a good way to have a first fish. Probably right near that 40-inch class fish. Good, thick, heavy fish. It pays to have a little backpack with all your tools. But yeah, it definitely pays to have the hook cutters and all that with us. Because as you saw, we had an issue there getting that hook out. She was hooked in the gill plate, not in the gills, but in the gill plate. But rather than stress that fish and try to sit there and pop those hooks out, it's safer to just cut them, which we did. We can throw a new hook on there, no problem. And we were able to get her to swim off. She was a little bit tired there, had a big battle. She swam off just fine. And she's actually just already cruising up and down already. We can see her here. But that's the key, having all your tools that you'd normally have on the boat. Hook cutters, long pliers, your net as well. This way we can work these fish in the water and help them revive them safely and land them safely, and just keep these fish that are so fragile, keep them healthy, and this way more anglers can come out here and enjoy them just like that. I mean, we've had 2 fish up on topwaters, and now we caught that one. So I mean, that's action from 3 fish in just literally a couple hours being out here working and filming. That's just how good this stretch of river is. If you're not fishing it, you're missing out. Shallow water, don't let it fool you. They're here. So let's break down exactly a few things here as to why. Let's start with first why we caught that fish and what we pulled that fish from, what type of structure. Now, where I was standing was just within casting distance of the edge of another little pea gravel flat here on the west side. So it comes up very shallow, probably just about 1.5 feet, 2 feet tops, before it drops back down to that 3.5 foot mark. I had the channel that I was still able to reach on the east side, and in between there's that little bit of that 3 foot range of water. So that fish, now we could have either pulled her off the edge of this flat, and I'm actually standing now up on the flat, or that fish could have even come in from the channel itself. So again, 2 small pieces of structure come together. You have a shallow pea gravel flat with a little basin at the end of it, and then you have your channel to the east of it. So you get 2 pieces of structure coming together. We've been seeing nothing but shad, some carp as well. So the food source is here. So when you have 2 pieces of structure and you have the food, you find the muskies. Now, one other big key part to this whole thing, when we netted that fish, you have to remember that there is current always. Be it even if it's not very much at all, if it's even just a light current, there's still current pushing it. So now when we net that fish, as you saw, I bring them in head first into the bag. The thing you want to remember though is you want to bring them in slightly at that angle so they'll come into the bag. The bag is pushed that way, downstream, and that fish will enter the bag just like that as well. If we turn around and we were trying to do it the other way around, the bag is going to swing out, and now you stand the chance of the bag grabbing those hooks of that fish that are in the fish. Now he's going to start thrashing, head shaking. Next thing you know, that fish shakes free and it never made it to the hoop. So always remember the current and use it to your advantage when you're netting the fish out here. That's a huge, huge tip that'll save you a lot of lost fish. We learned the hard way ourselves. We've learned it even in the boats and rough water and high winds. Trust me, always be aware of the current flow so that you don't have that bag flare out and end up taking a fish away from you. Mike just had one come up there. Now you notice Mike's going to keep figure eighting like that because sometimes these fish will shoot off, but they've been known to come back on a bait. And he even noticed how he's throwing a topwater, but he's gone ahead and buried that rod tip into the water. That bait is still turning, it's still swimming, it's doing everything we want it to do. We don't necessarily want to keep it on the surface. We can change directions, change the depths in the water, and hopefully get that fish to eat. Well, everybody, that's about all the time we got for this week. We hope we shed some light on how much fun muskies can be in this river, and especially topwater muskies. Primarily all our action today came on that little runt rager from Mammoth Lures, and as well as that jitter snake as well that they produce. These two baits from Mammoth are phenomenal. The jitter snake in that medium size and the little runt ranger. I tell you right now, that is probably two of the best topwater baits we can throw out here. The bite sure died down pretty quick, but that happens out here. It's not uncommon to have these windows, these feeding windows open up, and you'll have a fury of action from a handful of fish, and then it just shuts down like that. That's just a lot of times how the muskies are out here. But in the course of just a couple hours, we had action from 4 fish, between fish blowing up and missing, following, and the one, of course, that we landed. So, once again, my name's Tony Krizek. We can't wait to see you back out here next week for more of Tony's Spot On Fishing.